I'm a 21-year-old guy still living at home while going to college, sharing the house with my parents, both in their 50s, and my older brother, who's 26. Since I started college 2 years ago, my parents have been charging me $500 a month just to stay in my old childhood bedroom. And I'm also covering every single college-related expense myself. Now, that might sound fair if money was tight in our household, but it's not. What really stings is that my brother never had to pay a dime in rent when he was in school. In fact, his entire education was fully funded from a $60,000 college account our grandfather set up for both of us when we were born. The setup was simple: $60K for my brother's college, $60,000 for mine. My brother used his fund to graduate from a solid university, completely debt-free. So, when my turn came, I figured I'd have the same opportunity. Instead, I was told the money was gone. No clear explanation, just vague excuses like times are tough and money doesn't grow on trees. But at the same time, they made it clear I was expected to stay enrolled full-time and work almost full-time to cover my own tuition, bills, and still pay them rent every single month. At first, I just went along with it. Maybe there was some kind of emergency, I thought, or maybe the money had been used for something unavoidable. But whenever I tried asking for details, my parents completely shut me down. Over time, though, things just didn't add up. The biggest red flag was my brother's wedding last year. It was insane: hundreds of guests, a high-end venue, a designer gown for his wife, live band, gourmet catering, and yep, even an ice sculpture. A freaking frozen swan. I remember standing there at the reception doing the math in my head. That wedding had to cost tens of thousands, and all I could think was, how are they pulling this off if they supposedly couldn't afford to help me with school? I didn't say anything that day, obviously. It was my brother's wedding, not the time or place for drama. But even after the celebrations, the feeling that something wasn't right kept gnawing at me. Still, I had no hard proof. And every time I tried to bring it up, they hit me with guilt trips: be grateful we give you a roof over your head, or you need to stand on your own 2 feet. They acted like I was selfish for even asking about it. So I let it go, for a while. This week, though, I hit my breaking point. I just wrapped up a brutal summer semester while juggling 2 jobs just to stay afloat. I was burned out, physically and emotionally. So I finally confronted them head on. I asked straight up, what happened to the money Grandpa set aside for my education? Why am I paying rent to live in my old bedroom while barely scraping together money for textbooks? And why didn't my brother ever get the same treatment? I'll admit, I was fired up. The conversation got heated fast. My mom snapped that I was out of line and told me flat out, the money's gone. You need to move on. No details, no explanation. My dad jumped in with, you're an adult. It's normal to pay your own way. That's when I lost my temper. I told him point blank that it wasn't normal for parents to charge their college kid rent, especially when there was literally a fund created for my schooling. I accused them of acting like thieves, of taking money that was meant for me and refusing to explain what happened to it. That was when things really exploded. My mom turned beet red, absolutely livid. My dad looked like he wanted to throw me out right then and there. He told me that if I was going to accuse them of stealing, then I could pack my bags and get out. They both started shouting that I was ungrateful, selfish, and that I was expecting some kind of handout. I pushed back that this wasn't just a handout, it was a gift from Grandpa, specifically for my education. They shouted back that I had no clue what financial stress they'd been under. Eventually, I just gave up and walked out. We weren't getting anywhere. Now things at home are just plain toxic. We barely speak. My brother, who, by the way, moved back in after his wedding, that's another can of worms, keeps pressuring me to apologize and keep the peace. He says if our parents used the money, they must have had a good reason, and I should just trust them. He also keeps telling me I'm being overly dramatic and that I'll get over it. Easy for him to say. He got a paid education and a fairy tale wedding while I'm breaking my back trying to get through school and getting nickel and dime for rent. Now I'm stuck in this uncomfortable situation, wondering if I crossed a line by calling them out. Part of me feels guilty, but a bigger part of me feels like I'm being completely screwed over. I get that my parents don't owe me a free ride or some fancy lifestyle. But this just feels wrong on every level. So tell me, am I the jerk for snapping at my parents and refusing to keep paying rent when I'm pretty sure they blew my college fund on my brother's wedding? Update 1, rewritten. Well, this blew up way more than I ever expected. First off, thank you. Seriously. I figured maybe 10 or 15 people would see this, not hundreds. The support and perspective you all gave me were overwhelming. The general verdict was clear: I'm not the one in the wrong here. A lot of you picked up on the same pattern I did, that my college fund likely got funneled straight into my brother's luxury wedding. Many of you also said I should go straight to the source, my grandfather, and find out what really happened. I'd been hesitant to get him involved, but that was the push I needed. So, I called him. And, wow. Not happy doesn't even begin to cover it. My grandfather is in his 70s, usually calm, even a bit goofy at times. But when I explained what was going on, that I'm working 2 jobs just to survive while the money he set aside for my education has seemingly vanished, he lost it. When I talked to Grandpa, he confirmed exactly what I feared. He did give my parents $60,000 specifically for my college education. And as far as he knew, that money should still be sitting there, untouched. There hadn't been any emergencies or major family issues he was aware of that would justify dipping into that fund. A few of you asked whether the money had been put into a formal trust or maybe an account under my name. Unfortunately, no, it wasn't that official. Grandpa had just saved up the money and then handed it over to my parents when I was getting close to college age, trusting them to hold on to it and use it responsibly, just like they had for my brother. Yeah, safe to say he's kicking himself for trusting them now. Grandpa was furious when I told him everything, how I was working myself into the ground trying to cover school costs and even paying rent to live in my own childhood bedroom, while the money he'd set aside for me had apparently just vanished. He demanded we have a sit-down with my parents immediately, so we arranged to meet at their house the next day. My parents had no idea he was involved yet, so it was going to be a full-on ambush. I was nervous, of course. No one wants to go toe-to-toe with their own parents, especially not with something like this. But honestly, I was also relieved. Having Grandpa on my side gave me the backup I wish I'd had from the start. I didn't want to drag extended family into it at first, but looking back, I should have done it way sooner. He deserved to know. And now that he does know, he's livid they kept him in the dark. Just to clear a few things up from earlier, yes, my brother and his wife are still living with our parents. They moved in right after their wedding to save up for a house. And no, they're not paying a single cent in rent. So let me get this straight, the newlyweds, both with full-time jobs, get a free ride, while I'm busting my ass in school and still expected to fork over $500 a month for the privilege of sleeping in my own childhood bed? Makes total sense, right? A few folks asked why I even stayed there under those conditions. And honestly, the answer is simple: I couldn't afford not to. That $500 rent was the cheapest option available. Renting even a tiny room around here would cost way more, and between tuition, books, and everyday expenses, I didn't have the wiggle room. Trust me, I didn't want to stay. I felt completely stuck. The silver lining is, after reading through your comments and advice, I started exploring my options. A close friend offered to let me crash at his place if things got too ugly, and Grandpa made it crystal clear I'm welcome at his house anytime. So if things hit the fan, I won't be out on the street. As for what's coming next, I don't know exactly how my parents are going to respond when we confront them. Will they deny everything? Try to spin some emotional story to flip the guilt onto me? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, Grandpa is not coming in lightly. He even said something about consequences if they didn't come clean. Not sure if he meant legal stuff or just blowing this wide open to the rest of the family, but either way, I'm here for it. Update 2, rewritten. So, yeah. I'm writing this from Grandpa's house now. Because, as of yesterday, I'm apparently no longer welcome at my parents' place. The confrontation went down and wow, it was everything you'd expect and more. We showed up unannounced at my parents' door early in the morning. My brother and his wife had already left for work, so it was just the 4 of us. We all sat down in the living room, and Grandpa didn't waste a second. He looked my parents dead in the eye and asked, "What happened to the money I gave you for my college?" They immediately started playing dumb. My mom gave some vague excuse, something like, "It's still in a savings account, but things have just been tight lately." My dad started rambling about inflation, rising costs, and how they had to dip into it for family needs. And just like many of you predicted, they tried to dodge, deflect, and avoid giving a straight answer. But Grandpa wasn't having it. He stayed calm, scary calm, and kept pressing. "What needs, exactly?" he asked. "Because I haven't heard of any medical bills, house repairs, or anything close to an emergency that would justify burning through $60,000. He didn't raise his voice once, but the tension in that room was suffocating. I sat back and let him run the show. Watching my 74-year-old grandfather calmly dismantle my parents' excuses one by one? Honestly, it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Brutal. And completely deserved. Eventually, after enough pressure, my dad slipped. He blurted something like, "We needed it for the wedding, alright? You wanted your grandson to have a nice wedding, didn't you?" And there it was. The truth. My mom immediately started crying and rambling about how they didn't have a choice, that they couldn't just cheap out on their own son's wedding. She tried to justify it by saying they thought they could pay it back before I started school, but things didn't go as planned. So there you have it, they blew through my entire college fund to throw my brother a dream wedding. All that money went into flower arrangements, open bars, custom suits, ice sculptures, you name it. Money that was meant for my future melted into a damn frozen swan centerpiece. I was so angry I could barely speak. I managed to stay calm, but I said, "So, let me get this straight. You drained my college fund to throw a party for my brother?" My dad barked back that I was being overly dramatic, and that a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. He said I could still go to college later, or just take out loans like everyone else. He even had the nerve to say they planned to pay me back eventually, but now I'd humiliated them by dragging Grandpa into it. I haven't heard him that angry in years. So yeah, this is where we are now. That moment set Grandpa off completely. He didn't yell, but his voice had this cold finality to it that honestly cut deeper than shouting ever could. He told my parents, point blank, they should be ashamed. That they didn't just steal from me, but from him, too. He made it clear they had to pay back every single dollar, immediately. My mom started panicking, saying they didn't just have that kind of money lying around. My dad got defensive and snapped, "What do you expect us to do? We can't undo the wedding. We don't have 60 grand sitting in a drawer." Grandpa just stared them down and said, "Not my problem. You made this mess. Now figure out how to clean it up." Then he dropped the hammer. If they didn't return the money, he said he'd take legal action and let the entire extended family know exactly what they did. I've never seen my dad's face drain of color like that. He looked like he'd just been slapped across the soul. And just to twist the knife a little more, my dad turned to me and said, "Well, you got what you wanted. Hope you're happy now, turned your own grandfather against us." Then he told me to get out of his house. I didn't even have time to respond. Grandpa had already stood up and said, "Come on. You're coming home with me." At that point, I was completely done. I grabbed my backpack, just what I had on me, and walked right out. I'll go back later for the rest of my stuff once things cool off, but for now, I'm out. And honestly, not how I pictured moving out for the first time, but I'll take it. Right now, I'm staying at Grandpa's place, taking a breather and figuring out what's next. We've already started looking at legal options. Grandpa called up his lawyer to find out where we stand since there was no formal trust in place. The situation's murky, legally speaking, but the lawyer said we've still got leverage. He's drafting a letter to send to my parents, laying out the terms: return the $60,000 within a reasonable timeframe, take out a loan if they have to, or be prepared to face the fallout. So yeah, I'm safe. I've got support. And for the first time in a long while, they're the ones squirming. It's been a hell of a day. And I just want to say thank you again to everyone who encouraged me to stand up for myself and pull Grandpa in. Watching my parents actually have to answer for what they did, seeing them confronted and cornered, was oddly satisfying, even if the whole situation is still painful and messy. I'll post another update when there's more news, especially if they decide to pay back the money or try to dig in deeper. Update 3, rewritten. A few days have passed, and I finally have some new updates, especially for everyone asking about my brother. A lot of you wanted to know, did he know what our parents did? And if so, how did he react? Well, I finally had a real sit-down with him. And let me tell you, it was a lot. First off, my parents haven't spoken to me since the blow-up. Total radio silence. But they did receive the formal letter from Grandpa's lawyer, demanding repayment of the full $60,000. Now, legally, we're on thin ice. There was no trust or formal agreement stating the money was mine, which makes things complicated. But the lawyer made it clear, if my parents don't cooperate, this could turn into a very public and very messy legal battle. Even if it's not an easy win in court, just exposing what they did would be a massive embarrassment for them. So far, no response from them. I imagine they're scrambling, trying to figure out how the hell to dig themselves out of this without completely torching their reputation. Now, on to my brother, let's call him D. At first, all he knew was that I was upset about my college fund being gone. But after the confrontation, the full story came out. He actually reached out the very next day and asked if we could meet and talk privately, away from the house. Honestly, I was bracing for him to take our parents' side, or try to guilt-trip me into smoothing things over. But he didn't. He had no idea our parents used my college money to pay for his wedding. And when I told him everything from my side, what I'd been going through, how hard I'd worked to stay afloat, he looked absolutely sick. He told me that during the wedding planning, our parents kept repeating, "Don't worry about the cost, we've got it handled." He just assumed they had savings, or maybe dipped into some equity or took out a loan. The idea that they would steal from my future? That never even crossed his mind. And I believe him. He got visibly emotional, his reaction was real. Not like Mom's staged tears. D kept apologizing over and over again, Said if he'd known where the money was coming from, he never would have let them go all out like that. He even said he felt gross thinking back on the ice sculpture and the band and the fancy catering now that he knew what it had cost, not in dollars, but in what I had to give up. So now, here we are. After learning the truth, D and his wife actually stepped up and offered to help make things right. He even said he'd sell his SUV, the same one our parents helped him buy, which, of course, didn't surprise me at this point, and put that money toward rebuilding my college fund. I told him flat out that he didn't need to do that. This mess wasn't his fault. It was 100% on our parents. But he wouldn't let it go, he was serious about helping. He also told me they've stopped house hunting for now. In fact, he and his wife are planning to move into a smaller apartment instead. He feels terrible knowing that his wedding came at the cost of my future, and he wants to do what he can to fix it. I reassured him that I don't blame him, not even a little, and that it's ultimately up to our parents to make this right. But if he truly wants to contribute, I'm not going to stop him. Truthfully, I'm still really bitter that our parents put all of us in this position to begin with. But it helps knowing D's in my corner now. Just having someone else in the family who sees how screwed up this was, it's a weight off my shoulders. He told me he's already had multiple blowout arguments with our parents since everything came to light. Apparently, he didn't hold back, he called them out for being selfish and completely short-sighted. As expected, Mom cried through most of it, saying they never meant to hurt me and thought they'd find a way to replace the money before I noticed. Yeah, not buying it. And Dad? He's mostly just angry that they got caught and embarrassed. He even told Dee that I overreacted by involving Grandpa, like this was just a minor misunderstanding instead of full-on betrayal. As for the $60,000, still no direct update from them. But Dee told me they've been meeting with a financial advisor and looking into taking out a loan or maybe refinancing the house. So clearly, they're scrambling behind the scenes. Probably because they know Grandpa wasn't bluffing when he threatened to go nuclear. I do have a tiny fear that Dad might dig in out of pride, he's that kind of guy, willing to burn the house down just to win an argument. But Mom's in panic mode, and I think she'll push hard enough to get him to cave. So that's where things stand right now. I'm still living at Grandpa's, focusing on work and finishing up my summer classes. I feel like I can finally breathe again, being out of that toxic house. It sucks that it had to come to all this, but I'm grateful to have people like Grandpa and Dee in my corner. Absolute legends, both of them. You know, people keep saying it, and they're right, this should never have happened. My parents could have easily thrown a nice, modest wedding for my brother without setting my entire future on fire. But they chose not to. That was their decision. At least now, the people who matter know the truth. Update 4, rewritten. Big update. And for once, it's good news. My parents paid me back. It took a few more weeks, but the full $60,000 is now sitting in my account, safe and sound. Grandpa helped me set it up in a protected account that only I have access to. It still doesn't feel real. From what I've heard, my parents ended up taking out a home equity loan to get the cash together. They wired the money to Grandpa first, and then he transferred it straight to me. We haven't talked or seen each other face to face, this was handled purely through lawyers and bank accounts. And honestly? That's fine by me. Seeing that money hit my account? It was surreal. I was relieved, but also still angry. I shouldn't have had to go to war with my own parents just to get back what was rightfully mine from the beginning. But hey, at this point, I'll take the win. I already used a big chunk of it to pay off the student loans and credit card debt I racked up trying to survive the last couple years. And let me tell you, hitting submit payment on those final balances? Absolute chef's kiss. Now, I can fully cover my last year of college without working myself into the ground. In fact, I just gave notice at one of my 2 part-time jobs. I'll keep the other to cover basic expenses, but I'm done working 50 to 60-hour weeks on top of a full class schedule. For the first time in ages, I feel like I can finally breathe. I'm not falling asleep in class anymore. I don't have to beg for assignment extensions because I pulled a double shift the night before. It's like this massive weight has been lifted off me. As for my parents, we still haven't spoken. Not once. Grandpa didn't follow through with the lawsuit or the public shaming, since they paid up, but he's made it very clear things will never go back to normal. He's civil, but cold with them now. He handled the legal side and nothing more. And privately, he told me he's changed his estate plan. My parents? They've been effectively cut out of any future inheritance. They don't know that, and I'm definitely not telling them, but just knowing it? That feels like justice. My brother isn't really talking to them either. He said that when the bank loan came through and the $60,000 disappeared from their account, my mom had a full-blown meltdown. Cried about how everything's ruined now. Dee told me he just walked away. Said he didn't feel a single ounce of sympathy. Honestly, neither do I. We both still love our parents in some distant, obligatory kind of way, but there's no trust left, no respect. And neither of us is in any rush to repair that. I got what I needed. I have what was meant for me. And now I'm moving forward. I've got one more year left until I graduate, and it's wild how different everything feels now. I'm doing better in my classes, kind of hard not to when I'm not constantly sleep deprived and stressed out. I even have time to see friends again, hang out, have a social life, which feels amazing. I never thought I'd say this, but despite everything, it's finally looking up.